Alright guys, it's Chatterbox Reviews, coming at you guys with my review for the second season of Mindhunter on Netflix. Alright, so Season 2 of Mindhunter has finally arrived. It came out on Netflix this weekend, and I got a chance to check out all 9 episodes in the last couple days. So I was really looking forward to this season. After Season 1 in 2017, probably one of my favorite shows of the year. It was a bit surprising. It was a show that I probably, liked, the kind of genre and the overall kind of tone and themes that they were doing. Was something I knew I would probably like, but I was still a little bit taken aback by it. I was really impressed by it. Now, it wasn't a perfect season. Obviously, it had its weaknesses, and, I had some problems with it, but overall, just a really impressive season of television to me, and at the time, too, with the Netflix originals. At the time, I was thinking, some of them are okay, some of them not so good. So, in this time, I really thought it was probably the best Netflix original series, at least at the time, and now they have a few more. Stranger Things has really kind of blown up, along with some others, Ozark too, but just was really looking forward to this season of Mindhunter, even though it's almost 2 years later. I had to do a rewatch of Season 1, because I found I just almost forgot everything about Season 1 when I was doing a rewatch of it, and so anyways, refreshed myself, and then we got into this season, and like I said, just really excited to get my thoughts on this one, and also check it out finally after all this time. So anyways, I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on this season. If you haven't seen it yet, what kind of things are you looking forward to in it, and what did you love so much about Season 1 that makes you want to watch a Season 2? And if you have seen it, I'd love to hear any or all of the stuff that you want to share about the season. I'd love to have a conversation with you guys about all that stuff. Of course, I'm going to share a lot of my thoughts, so I'd love to hear if you agree or disagree and why. Just love to have that conversation with you guys. And I'd also like to hear your opinion on whether this season is better or worse than Season 1. I've heard, a lot of differing opinions on this one, differing viewpoints, and I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on that one as well. But anyways, if you enjoyed the review, please leave a like and consider subscribing to the channel. Would really appreciate that as well. But without any further ado, let's get to the review. So this one's going to be split up a little bit differently. So the first few minutes here are going to be non-spoilers. So if you haven't seen the season yet, you can stick around for this. And it won't, spoil anything about the season in particular. And you can kind of hear my overall thoughts of what I thought of the season and where it kind of lines up for me while compared to Season 1. And then I'll get into spoiler territory. And I suggest if you haven't seen the season, you click off at that point. So I'll give you guys a warning for that when I get to it. But that'll just be going in depth and talking about pretty much anything about the season, really. And kind of discuss that stuff. But anyways, so, for the non-spoiler portion here. After almost 2 years since Season 1, the second season of Mindhunter has arrived and reacquaints us with Holden Ford, Bill Tench, and Wendy Carr as they continue their work on developing profiles for serial killers in the late 70s and early 80s. And this is where the timeline changes this season as well. I think we go into 81 is as far as we go in this season, where in last season it was just exclusively the 70s. This season explores some new serial killers, including David Berkowitz, Charles Manson, William Pierce, and some others, right? But those are probably the most well-known, or infamous serial killers, if you will. And it also depicts the case of the Atlanta child murders, where Holden and Bill attempt to apply their extensive profiling work on the national stage in order to catch the killer, or in order to catch, basically, the one responsible for the Atlanta child murders kind of, whole deal there. It is a case, but of course it's made up of 28 or 29 different cases, all taking place within the same, timeline, and that's kind of what they work with in this season. So this season is written by a whole new team of writers, headed by Joshua Donen and Courtney Miles, with Joe Penhall, the creator, aboard as a consultant. David Fincher remains an executive producer this season and directs the first 3 episodes, though he's pretty much the only constant between Season 1 and Season 2. I believe he directed the first 2 and last 2 of Season 1. And he's honestly the only one that's still in his same role this season, which is really interesting. I will touch on that in just a little bit. So this season stars Jonathan Groff, Holt McCallany, Anna Torv, Stacey Roca, and Sonny Valicenti, and So that's, pretty much the same stars. I think Stacey Roca takes a little bit of a step up this season. She is a little bit of a bigger part. And then we also get some other ones in there like Jim Barney and some other new characters that play a larger part in the season. But ultimately we stick with our kind of main three cast members here with our three main characters. So here is kind of my log line and my general kind of overall thoughts of the season without going in too much depth where I kind of get into spoilers. But here we go. So throughout the 9-episode run, this season delivers on the intriguing yet uncanny tone and pacing of the first season as our characters study some new infamous serial killers. However, the season becomes stagnant in the second half when the pacing slows down to a crawl and the focus remains on one particular case, which in turn leaves little room for the study of further subjects, which to me is often the show's greatest strength, right? So I feel like in the second half it kind of branches off from what the show is really good at and goes into a totally different direction that I feel isn't done as well. So thus this makes for a fairly unbalanced season that has some outstanding moments, some moments that are even maybe better than season 1's biggest moments, but ultimately it struggles to maintain consistency, which leaves something to be desired as it just doesn't live up to the more polished and balanced first season of the series. So those are my thoughts right there of just my overall opinion after watching the season, of that season 1 is better because it's more well-rounded, because it's more consistent throughout. This season, again, I felt like at times was better. It was even more impressive than season 1, but the second half really brought it down for me, and it kind of, I felt like it kind of branched out from Mindhunter. It really became almost a different show with just the same characters, and that's something that was a little bit disappointing to me. But anyways, those are my overall thoughts. Now, let's get into spoilers, where I'll be discussing a lot of stuff about the series in specific, and really kind of diving into some of the stuff with the writers, the new directing, and all that type of stuff. Alright, so now let's get into spoiler territory. Alright, so first I want to start off with the writing team and kind of the whole different angle that they take this season in. So Pennell is a consultant for the season, but all new writers for it, which is really interesting. You almost never see that for a show. At least a creator kind of sticks around. Like, they might get a new writing staff, a couple new writers here and there, a couple new directors. But this season is like almost a completely different show in terms of the people behind it making it, right? So Joe Pennell, they brought as a consultant, I'm guessing, to kind of give them some more insights of what maybe he was going for with this story after we left it off in season 1. And I will say, for this being the case, I think they actually did a pretty good job at picking up these characters and the overall tone of the series. I think they did a fantastic job at that. I mean, the beginning of the show, even the second half where it kind of branched off from some of the main parts of season 1, I think it was still, the tone was still really well set. The character development and the way they followed these stories was still in the same kind of, elements they used to do that. So I will say I got to give them props for that. For you taking over a show and writing a whole new season like this, and all the writers and most of the directors from last season being gone, I gotta give him credit, because this season did feel still like the same show, and honestly, that may be, it may not have turned out that way if the writers weren't able to kind of recapture the same tone and characters of that first season. So David Fincher is the only constant between the two seasons, as I mentioned off the top, and that's probably why it took almost 2 years to get, to be honest with you. And I didn't know all this stuff behind the scenes until about a couple months ago, I think, that I found all this out when I was reading up on it, trying to find out when it was coming out, right? And so that's probably why it almost took 2 years to get, is because of so much change going on with the writing team, the direction. David Fincher is sticking around, though. He's an executive producer, along with Charlize Theron as well. Which I didn't know about either in season 1, but yeah, so she's an executive producer, and she has carried over from season 1. But yeah, so it's really interesting that they were able to even just write something similar to season 1, being a whole new team of writers who, at least in my knowledge, had no involvement with season 1 at all. And some of these writers, like, they barely even have an IMDb page. Like, they don't have much filmography. So to me, I thought it was really impressive for some of these writers, and I think they definitely deserve a look from some other series to take them on, because I think they did a really great job. Even if I don't agree with some of the directions they took in this, I gotta give them credit. Like, I gotta give them credit for what they were able to do in this one. So, and then Dave Fincher directing, that kind of leads me to my next point, is the direction and cinematography was excellent as it was in the first season. That was not a problem in this season at all to me. The long, methodical shots and scenes, along with the visual color palette, play very well for the type of tone and feel of the show. Almost feels like an immersive experience, along with, of course, that it's a show in the 80s, right? So they're kind of going... back in time, it's a kind of a period show, if you will, right? And so that kind of causes this immersion, really, into this story. And that's something I just love about this show, is the pacing, the overall tone, and it's set by the direction choices in the way that they play out these long, methodical scenes, especially the interviews. Those are, like, some of these interviews in season 1, they took, like, I think close to 20 minutes was one of the Kemper ones, right? So, like, a 20-minute scene just playing out, and it's just these, like, long shots. They kind of circle around the table. They go to Kemper. They go on Holden's face, right? So, I just love the way that they do that. And this season, it stayed really consistent with the way they did in season 1, and that is something I really, really enjoyed as a result, because I really liked that in season 1 as well. All right, so the next thing is kind of getting into my negatives. Those are kind of my two biggest positives of this one, are the most, impressive things about the season. So to me, the first half was great, and I think even some of this first half was perhaps better than the first season, because I thought the first half really recaptured some of those great moments, like the interviews with Berkowitz in the season and Manson. I would say the first half is like up to episode 5, in my opinion. And I thought it was just really great. And then you kind of introduced some of the stuff with the BTK, although they didn't go in depth about that, but it was mentioned and they kind of, talked about it and all that stuff that was going on. And I was really, really enthralled in it. Thought it was really great, and like I said, at the time thinking, well, this is better than season 1 right now. But then we got the second half, which to me is episodes 6, 7, 8, and 9, and it just really fell off, in my opinion. The pace slowed down to a crawl, as I said before, and the focus on one case just wasn't justified, in my opinion, with the payoff that we got in the end. And I get it, right? Because I understand that it was a real case and they were trying to depict the facts of it, right? And of course, if a real case doesn't have a big, climax ending and it's a big twist or something like that, and it's this guy instead of this guy, then you can't do that on screen, right? Unless you're going to take a big dramatic license, which the show isn't known to do. So I get it, right? I understand that the real story, it wasn't, it didn't have a big climax. It didn't have a big twist. That's just the way it ended. But to me, then it shouldn't have been, it shouldn't have been stretched out for so long. It maybe should have been contained in 2 to 3 episodes, and they knew that the payoff would be rather anticlimactic, as it was, because they were trying to keep the real facts of the story. And of course, I'm talking about the Atlanta child murders here. So that was kind of my main complaint there. I thought, that the actual case itself, the Atlanta child murders case, was introduced in episodes 3 and 4, and then they kind of go on a break. They get episode 5 with Manson, and Holden and Bill are kind of called back to Virginia, back to Quantico, to do these interviews. But then in episodes 6, 7, 8, and 9, all of those episodes are pretty much like just focused on the Atlanta child murders, outside of course, Wendy and Greg doing some interviews on their own of some lesser known serial killers. And I just thought, I just thought it's a lot of focus on the case for the payoff that we got in the finale. It just was kind of lackluster to me. And I thought that episode 1, 2, and 5 were actually my favorite of the season. And so it's kind of funny that those are my favorite of the season, and those are the ones that really didn't focus that much on the case. Those were really like the actual serial killer interviews. And episode 1 I thought was a really great episode in kind of getting us back to this. I was really surprised they picked up where they left off in season 1 with Holden. That was a really big surprise, and I loved it. I love what they did in episode 1. And then 2 and 5, you got Berkowitz and Manson. And episode 5, a really great episode. So it seemed to me like each half of the season was done by a different writing team. Like the second half seemed like a true detective season, while the first half seemed more like Mindhunter. And of course, that's not the case. The writers were the same, or at least, relatively the same for both halves of the season. But honestly, like the second season felt like a True Detective season, very similar to True Detective season 1, in my opinion, with the kind of case that they were doing and kind of the constant twists and turns. And then, the mystery intensifies a little bit, and then Holden is kind of foiled by the red tape and the politics of it. So I really enjoyed it, and I thought it was, at times intriguing. It was definitely, the mystery was definitely there, and the suspense was there, but it wasn't really Mindhunter to me. It's kind of just dropping our characters into a True Detective storyline and playing out in the season of Mindhunter. So, I don't know. That's just my opinion of it. Like I said, I enjoyed the first half a lot. I mean, a lot. I thought it was probably better than season one. Definitely better than the first half of season one, right? But the second half just really brought it down. And for the ending that they gave us, just seemed a little bit lackluster for that much focus. Now, my second biggest complaint with this season is, and that first complaint is kind of the unbalance, right? The trouble in maintaining kind of consistency throughout the entire season. And this one is a big one for me too, is where was Holden this season? I mean, really, like, where was he? To me, it's like, yeah, he's on screen, he's doing stuff, but it's like, we never really found much, much about him at all. There was very little development for him. His girlfriend was just gone this season, which I feel like a lot of people complained about that, including myself. That the actress playing his girlfriend probably wasn't the best actress, probably not the right one for the role, and that stuff really just kind of dragged the story. So that's fine, right? The girlfriend's gone. All right, well, some of the viewers would probably be happy, but then they just did nothing for him. Like, his girlfriend is gone, and they never replaced her with anything. And also, a notable thing is, in the first episode, they talk about these panic attacks and the serious anxiety after Kemper and kind of the consequences of that. Like, he'll be in an interview, right? This is what they talk about. Gunn, who's the new character, by the way, and Bill and Wendy, they all talk about, Holden might break down in an interview, and that might, cause some trouble. There'll be consequence around that. They talk about it a lot, but it never actually happens. We never see it happen outside of, I think, episode 1. Right at the very end, when Shepard says that Holden was the one who got him fired, he has kind of a mini attack there, but he ends up being fine. He doesn't need any hospitalization or anything like that. But it just, like, I don't understand why you would present that at the very beginning and focus so much on it, and then that never ends up happening. And so to me, it felt like the development, like all the character development, was given to Bill and Wendy instead, which wasn't very well done. I don't think it was even that much better than Holden and his girlfriend last season. And that's just my feeling of it, right? I think some people might disagree with that. And I think, to be fair, the Bill son stuff was interesting, but I think they dragged it out way too long. And like, it would have been interesting, and it's kind of, unnerving a little bit, hitting close to home. I like what they were trying to do with it, but they dragged that thing out for like 5 episodes of this season. And I kind of felt like Bill, and then I was worn down and almost tired of just watching him go back and forth for these meetings and stuff that never really materialized into anything at the end of the season. And so to me, it's like, you're going to give that development to Bill and Wendy, and then not give Holden anything. Not even his panic attacks. We're not even going to explore that, right? He pretty much is just a generic character, whereas in season 1, I liked it because, now I had complaints about the girlfriend stuff, but at least kind of the sexual stuff, they were really going into that, exploring what him interviewing these criminals would cause in his, regular life, and how that would affect his relationships and even his sex life, with obviously the sexual deviance that he, learns from these killers. And I love that. I thought it was really great, and they just completely dropped that this season. So that was frustrating. And then also, of course, the development for Wendy, Wendy's relationship parts really broke up the pacing to me. And again, in the end of it, there was not much of a point to them. I liked it. I liked that they were giving Wendy some screen time here. She didn't get a lot in season 1, to be fair, but I liked the way that they explore this again, because I felt like, again, in season 1, the whole part about her being lesbian and her not wanting to be outed, I thought, like, they brought it up and then never really explored that anymore after she moved then to Quantico. And so they do that in this season, but again, it just felt kind of cliche and tropey at times, and just kind of frustrating, because at the end of the season, she just breaks up with the girl, and that's how it ends. And there's really no point to all those scenes that we saw. And then also, my other complaint would just be, like, the placement of those scenes. I think I would have liked them better if it didn't interrupt every single kind of cliffhanger that we had with the Atlanta child murders case that was going on at the time. So, Anyways, those are my thoughts there. I will say, though, Wendy and Greg's interviews were interesting. I actually liked that spin that showed them going out and trying the interviews, and I liked that they didn't have much success at first. And I also liked that it gave Wendy a little bit more development. In the one interview, she even outs herself, right? And says that she had a relationship with another woman, and that gets the guy talking. And so that is really great development for her character. But then Gunn just tells her no, like she can't keep doing those interviews. And that's pretty much just stops after a couple episodes. And we never see Greg again in the season, by the way. So just a little bit frustrating to see the way that they spent the time. And again, I like the ideas they were going for, just didn't really pan out that well. My next complaint then is the BTK killer. So I love that they mentioned and focused on him in the beginning of the season, and then they just totally forgot about him again. And I thought this was really important that they mentioned him, because season 1, like, it just felt like really almost disjointed, really. I liked it, don't get me wrong, but I feel like there should have been at least some mention of this guy for at least for casual viewers. Like, they probably would have had no idea if you hadn't done the research and knew who that guy was, the ADT guy. You would have no idea what any of those scenes mean. And in this season, they do. They actually talk about him. They I think it's like 2 episodes that Bill is helping out the guy, trying to figure out what is going on with that. And I love that they connect the Son of Sam with him, and the way that the letters kind of line up. And it really is great in tying in Berkowitz to a real life case and applying what they learned from him in that interview. But then they just completely forget about the BTK guy once the Atlanta child murder story hits. And that's essentially it. And so I felt like it's just another season of seeing this, these kind of unsettling short glimpses of this guy, just another whole season long, right? They mention at the very beginning, and then they just totally forget about him, yet we still see these odd, kind of, like I said, unsettling, unnerving scenes of him doing these things until the very end of the finale, where we see it getting, it kind of ramps up, and that we find out that he's already killed 2 women, or I guess that's what they kind of lead us to believe, right, with the driver's license on the bed at the very end there. But so I just thought this was a real missed opportunity here. Obviously, the real BTK killer wasn't caught until 2005, but it was still because of course that doesn't fit with the timeline, right? His killing started around this time, but he wasn't caught until 2005. But I still felt like you could have focused on his case a little bit more than they did. But maybe that actually does limit them, and maybe they are saving BTK for season 3, or even a later season where they do a time skip to 2005, where they could actually catch him in a real case and do that. So that might be the case too, and fair enough if that is what their plan is. But I will say, it just felt like a missed opportunity this season, where they could have went more in depth with him and really kind of connected the dots. Instead, they chose not to. And again, I was really frustrated here because he was like totally absent for 2 or 3 episodes in this season, and he wasn't even at the very beginning before the intro or anything. And so I didn't really like how they kind of chose where to put him, and then all of a sudden in the finale, he just shows up kind of randomly at the very end, kind of a post-credit scene actually. So anyways, those are kind of my thoughts. But again, if they have plans for him in the future, then I'm all in. Maybe I'll be I'll come back to this and I'll be like, nope, they made the right call, right? So we'll have to see. I will say episode 5 is probably the best of the series, in my opinion. I thought the Manson stuff was fascinating, and the interview was just amazing. Really, really great scene. I would say the Kemper scene in season 1 is probably a little bit better, but this one, man, an actor playing Manson, I forgot his name now, but he also played him Once Upon a Time in Hollywood just recently, but he is really, really great, and, he just looked the part as well. Same with Berkowitz, the actor playing him. He was really great, too. But I do wish, though, that they chose a different killer or a different interview for Bill to take out his anger on, because this actually kind of stopped this interview a little bit short, whereas I wish that Bill could have taken his anger out on someone else, right? I like the way that it's written. I'm just, as a fan, kind of wanting to see Holden interview Manson after all this build up and all this talking about it, and then Bill kind of ruins it for him. And so that was a little bit frustrating, but again, I get it, because that's where Bill was, and that's kind of where his mindset was. So I actually really, really liked that episode and the whole Manson thing, and they actually interview Tex after that. Holden goes and interviews him, and I thought that was really interesting as well, because, that's a case that a lot of people are still interested in to this day. Quentin Tarantino just made a movie about it, right? And a kind of alternate history one. And so that's really interesting. My only problem here with this episode was Kemper. This having him play, come in this scene in this episode right before they go to see Manson, it seemed more like fan service than actual like making a story or development in the season for Holden. To see him again there, and it was just such a short scene. It felt like they just wanted to have Cameron Britton back for the scene and wanted to show the fans Kemper. And I feel like they also kind of, I don't know. I just didn't really like the way they conveyed him in this season, in this little scene that he had. I just feel like they didn't really take him seriously at all in this scene, and it really did feel like fan service. But other than that, the whole episode, the whole rest of it was really great in terms of the Manson stuff. Really fascinating stuff. So my last point here then I want to talk about is a season 3. So will we actually get a season 3? Anyone's best guess, I suppose, right? Netflix hasn't been doing so well recently with season 3s, and a lot of people are kind of doubting, and I've seen, online, that this even will get a season 3 now, which I would be really disappointed in. Like I said, I have my problems with this season, and I think season 1 was better, but I'd love to see another season of this. They have so many more serial killers and cases that they could explore. And I think, a time skip for season 3 would also be beneficial for them in order to explore some more serial killers that are a little bit more recent. I'm not sure how many are in the 80s section there, but I'm pretty sure they've covered most of the more infamous killers. And then we kind of get to the BTK guy in 2005. I'm not sure if they would do a time skip that far, but maybe if they do a time skip, they can get closer to that story and explore that a little bit more. And like I said, explore some other big ones, like Dahmer, but that might be a little bit later too. So anyways, I mean, it depends how long the series runs, right? Maybe if they have a 5-season plan, then maybe time skip isn't necessary. But if they do get a season 3, I would like to see something like that happen. And then we can kind of come back and see where these characters are again. That would be really great. We go through about 2 years in this in the timeline for this season as well, so it's not like they just spent a few days for sure. So anyways, love to hear your guys' thoughts on whether you think it will get a season 3. Like I said, I'm hoping, even though I have my reservation about this season, I'd love to see season 3, love to see what they can give us in that. But until then, I guess we'll have to wait. Hopefully not another 2 years, man. Hopefully not, but we'll have to see. I'll probably wait that long. I'll still watch it, and then I'll probably rewatch these 2 seasons again because I'll totally forget them. Anyways, all right, so to end things off here, 2 things I loved about this season. Number 1 is the direction and cinematography throughout, as I said off the top, and the really great job it did at setting the tone of the series. It was just really great in season 1 and in this season. Really good. I would say probably even a higher level this season. I thought the direction was just fantastic for this one. Number 2 then, 2 things I loved is the performances from the cast. I didn't talk about this much, but I would say, the performances by the actor who played Berkowitz and Manson, and also the actor who played Wayne Williams. Like, all those actors just have pretty small roles, to be fair, but I thought they were really great, in their kind of guest roles. Also, the guy who played William Pierce was also really good. I recognize him in some other stuff as well. But yeah, so those guest kind of roles were really great, and I feel like the casting, the people who do the casting were just... like, they really knew exactly who they wanted for these, and the makeup and kind of the costume design. Everything looked so authentic, and they really look like the real guys. So I got to give a lot of credit to them. And then also, of course, just our main cast, right? Jonathan Groff, Holt McCallany, Anna Torv. They were all phenomenal as they were in season 1. And I don't know, I mean, maybe it's because it's kind of a horror genre show, but they deserve Emmys, man. They really do. I think Jonathan Groff, for sure. Holt McCallany, for sure. Anna, like, all 3 of them, I think deserve Emmys for this season, but we'll have to see. Like I said, maybe that horror element holds them back a bit because they didn't get him for season 1. Cameron Britton won for playing Edmund Kemper for the 1 episode, but that's all they got. So I'd like to see them get a little bit more. One thing I didn't like then is the unbalanced pacing and storytelling. As I said, first half felt like the regular Mindhunter and was really great. Second half seemed more like True Detective with our characters kind of inputted into it. But that's just my opinion after all. So favorite episode then is going to be episode 5, of course. Like I said, I think it's the best of the series now, and I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on what you thought of it with the Manson and Kemper and how all that stuff kind of came to be in that episode as well. I'd love to hear what your guys' favorite episode is. Alright, so that'll just about do it for my thoughts on Mindhunter Season 2. Again, love to hear your guys' thoughts on the season, and how does it compare to Season 1 for you as well? That's something I'd really like to hear your thoughts on. Just a lot of different viewpoints out there, and I'd just like to hear what you guys think and why you think that as well. Now you know my thoughts, and I'd love to know if you agree or disagree. That'd be really great to have discussions. So, anyways, guys, really glad I checked this one out. Like I said, I got my reservations about this season. I think Season 1 is better, but I'm still really glad I checked this out. After all this time, rewatched Season 1, did this. Just a really great time, and I really enjoy the tone and just the overall kind of atmosphere and genre, I guess, of the show. And I'll definitely be back for Season 3 if we get it or when we get it, right? Gotta be optimistic. But anyways, guys, that'll just about do it for me. So thank you guys so much for watching this one, and we'll see you in my next review.